Don't give up so early. Drown in a sanguine flood. Don't fall behind. Don't give up so early. You are more frail than you know. Wild and wicked, this beast yearns for your blood.
As it should be.
Prejudice infuriates me.
Hello! This is going to be an update for the Bloodbarrier Warbringer for 0.3. Even if you've watched any of the previous videos, it's probably worth watching this because there has been a few changes. Now, the whole build revolves around Bloodbarrier. For the line, inflict corrupted blood for 5 seconds on block, dealing 50% of your maximum life as physical damage per second. Corrupted blood stacks up to 10 times, so that's basically that's your damage. So for scaling life for damage, I decided to go with Veil of the Night, which is a unique helmet that gives 50% increased maximum life, 10 to 20 to all attributes, 40% reduced light radius, and the pretty big downside of you have no elemental resistances. Now, if we look at the character sheet, you can see it's literally 0. And basically, that means that they can't be raised by items, they can't be lowered by curses, and they can't be penetrated by elemental damage either, because by default it can't penetrate below 0. So how do we mitigate elemental damage? I decided to go with Black Parade for this. It has a bit of armor, some strength and intelligence, 10% to all elemental resistances that doesn't affect you once you get Veil of the Night, but it's kind of good early. But the main reason we use it is for the line, X% of armor also applies to elemental damage. Now this is specifically elemental damage from hits, because by default, and kind of in general, armor only applies to hits. So because we're now scaling armor for elemental damage as well as physical damage mitigation, I decided to go with Gore Girdle, which is a belt that gives a little bit of armor, some strength, some life regen, but we use it for the line defend with 200% of armor. And basically what this means is whenever your armor is used for a calculation for mitigation, it's doubled. It comes with the downside of maximum physical damage reduction is 50%, but this is not as big of a downside as it sounds. Now, armor as a way to reduce damage taken has a formula for calculating how much is mitigated based on the damage of the hit. So the smaller the hit, the more armor mitigates, the bigger the hit, the less armor mitigates. So the likelihood of you getting 50% reduction on a big hit, the big hits that actually matter, you would need a lot of armor. So with this allows us to double our effective armor to more consistently hit that 50% reduction on those bigger hits. And as you can see here, this does only apply to the physical damage, so you get the full effect of your armor for elemental damage. The numbers that you see here are based on your base value of armor. So 5,000 armor is actually 10,000 armor, which is 20,000 armor when applied to your elemental hits taken. So something to keep in mind. Now, for the last of the items, Empire's Grasp gives some armor, some strength, some life per enemy killed, a little bit of global physical damage, and the main reason we use them is for knockback direction is reversed. Seismic Cry, the main skill you're going to be using all the time, knocks enemies back in a circle around you, and this basically makes it so that you pull them in towards you instead. This helps with grouping up corpses for Warcaller's Bellow to help with your single target against rare mobs when mapping. Then for rare items, it's literally just chaos resistance, life, strength, and then any stat requirements, intelligence, dex basically, for your skills and your items. I've got some elemental damage on this elemental resistance desecrated that is no use for this build, but I haven't upgraded any of these items since I finished the campaign. As you can see, this is like a T2 life roll, so these could definitely be upgraded, and there's no chaos res on it at all, besides the implicit. And it's the same for the other ring, it's just life, strength, whatever stats I wanted that were useful for the build, and then some rarity. The cold damage, physical damage to attacks, doesn't matter. Corrupted blood is secondary damage, and so is the corpse explosion, and secondary damage is not an attack and it's not a spell, so it can't be skilled with those. Boots is again just movement speed, life, chaos resistance and strength. I have no strength on these. I have an extremely low life roll and also a bad movement speed roll. It's also a low level base, so you could get more armor, more life, and all the stuff that you want from these. I'm just too lazy to upgrade them, and it hasn't been necessary. For amulet, it's again just life, strength, all attributes just gives you more strength, and then this does have increased global defenses desecrated onto it. You can force this pretty easily by if you have an open prefix or you use the omen that forces a prefix, along with the omen of the liege, which forces an Amunamu mod. There's only 3 Amunamu prefixes for amulets, so you're guaranteed to get increased global defenses if you want to go for a similar amulet. An alternative amulet, if you have the currency to do it, to get it, would be Defiance of Destiny. They're like 12 to 15 divines right now, so it's a big expenditure, but it's a big boost to your survivability. So definitely a worthwhile alternative if you have the currency to do it. On this, I have allocated Punctured Lung, or the line, enemies you fully armor break cannot regenerate life. There's some enemies that do not hit, which means you cannot apply stacks of corrupted blood from Bloodbarrier, so you're relying on the corrupted blood from Seismic Cry. And if they get the regenerate life mod, you will want to punch your monitor in rage because it is infuriating. So this basically just gives you a way to stop them from regenerating life. Even once the armor break goes away, they will never be able to regenerate life again. So you only need to proc this once to get the effect forever, for as long as the mob is alive. And then the last item is the quote-unquote weapon. We're using a scepter because your weapon stats don't really apply to your corrupted blood stacks. Because again, it's not an attack, so it doesn't use your weapon in any way. So the only benefits we can get from your weapon slot is strength, intelligence, again for whatever stats and skills you use, or whatever items and skills you use, and then spirit for more buffs. So that's why I literally have spirit, desecrated spirit, strength and intelligence. I could get better rolls on this if I could be bothered upgrading this. Yeah, that's kind of it for the items. Besides charms, it's literally just slow charm, silver charm for slows, thawing charm for freeze, and golden charm for some rarity. That kind of covers that. So we'll move on to the tree. So for the tree, you've got Renly's Training, which makes it so that your base chance to block is 35% instead of whatever your shield is. Bloodbarrier has like 20 to 23% chance to block depending on roll. This makes it so that it's 35% no matter what shield you're using. Then we use Turtle Charm. You take 20% of the damage from blocked hits, but your maximum block chance is 75%. Now in 0.3, your max block for all, just in general, is 50%. It can be raised, but you're only, I think the highest you can get is like 59% or something like that. It's way lower than this. Now, Turtle Charm, this mod means that your block chance is 75%, or your maximum block chance is 75%. So it can't be raised by the anvil, which means that this is the highest possible block chance that you can get now. Now, this only affects your maximum block chance, so you'll still need to get block chance on the tree and stuff like that. Then we use Warcaller's Bellow. Warcries explode corpses, dealing 25% of their life as physical damage, and the line ignore Warcry cooldowns. Now the wording of this is really important for the way that, for one of the kind of text that we're using. For the tree, it's basically just strength wherever you can get strength. The more dex and intelligence you can get on your gear, the less you'll have to worry about picking up for the smaller nodes here. Then it's just block chance wherever you can get block chance. So here, trying to get it as high as possible. It makes sense to use Lace Siege, which is 1% increased damage per 1% chance to block. You'll also get some small block chance nodes here as well. Then we've just got pro methods for more armor break and physical damage. This is kind of just strength here, strength here, strength here on Titanic. Then we have Prism Guard for 30% of armor applies to elemental damage, and Tempered Defenses for 15% of armor also applies to elemental damage. Same with all the small nodes here. This is kind of just to stack with the mod on Blackblade for more mitigation. We use blood magic because you use war cries so often that the mana cost gets really difficult to maintain. So we go blood magic because we can sustain life easier than we can sustain mana. So with that, with using war cries, we use guttural roar for war cry speed, debilitate, and also war cry skills have increased area of effect. Now the corpse explosions from Warcaller's Bellow also scale with your Warcry area of effect, so that helps with your overlap as well. Debilitate is a debuff that basically reduces movement speed and reduces damage dealt. This is reduced on dependent on monster rarity. The higher the rarity, the less effect it will have. We use Deafening Cries for 8% increased damage for each time you've Warcried recently. Recently is within the last 4 seconds. You can get your Warcry speed to around about 4 to 5 times per second. Last one for Warcry specifically is this node here, Urgent Call. Recover 2% of maximum life and mana when you Warcry, and then increase Warcry speed. We don't care about cooldown recovery because we ignore cooldowns. And then all the nodes, small nodes are just Warcry speed again. Some strength here as well. Again, Punctured Lung, we have Anointed. I have made to last year for 25% of physical damage prevented is recouped as life. You could probably ignore this once you get to a certain point, once you get the current skill setup that I have. So this you could probably save 2 points here if you wanted to. We take heavy armor for 150% of the strength requirements from boots, gloves and helmets are added as flat armor. So for example, the 64 strength requirement for these gloves, you would get 150% of that as extra flat armor. So the higher you can push your strength requirements on your boots specifically, if you're not using something like Trample Toe. And a quick point actually I forgot to mention is greater body runes and everything you can. Hikwani soul cores in your body armor. And then I also have a Chaos Res soul core here, because just to get capped. Unbending for some max life because you don't have a lot of sources on the tree. And then we come all the way down here. We have Iron Reflexes to convert all evasion rating to armor. We don't have a lot of evasion rating, but this helps all the evasion rating you do have just be more useful. To get a bit more evasion rating to work with that a bit better, we use Leatherbound Gauntlets, which is +1 to evasion rating per 1 armor on equipped gloves. This basically means that your gloves have double the amount of armor on them. Now, once you have converted evasion rating to armor, it is no longer affected by increases to evasion rating. It is now just armor. A difference from Path of Exile 1, but important to note if you did play that. We also use Polymathy for 7% increased attributes. We use Gem Enthusiast, 5% increased maximum life if you have at least 10 red support gems socketed. This is easy to get. It doesn't matter what the red support gems are. If you decide to go for a different skill setup than what I have, or skill gem setup than what I have, you just throw in any fucking 10 red support gems and you're fine. This is just more life. Obviously go through the strength nodes on both of these. And on this side, on the crystallized immunities, immune to ignite if a majority of your socket support gems are red, so these two synergize with each other. Most of the fire damage over time you'll experience is ignite, but not all of it is. So there is some that you will still take, but it's not as frequent as ignite is. So this gets rid of a big, of one of your most common elemental damage over time effects that you would see. And then for dual sockets, can't remember if I went over these or not, but basically block chance and Warcry speed. There's no Warcry speed on Seismic Cry anymore. So this is your only way to get Warcry speed besides the nodes on the tree. So block chance, Warcry speed, just up until you're block capped, and then just focus on Warcry speed. If you do decide to change some of these nodes, some of these are just placeholders, like this one up here. These smaller nodes here are just there for life, but you could get rid of those and take dual socket here, and that would give you another up to 40% Warcry speed. So because the faster you Warcry, the stronger you are basically for a few of the effects in this. I think that covers everything on the tree. So the last thing we'll do is just quickly run through the skills. The main thing you're going to be using is Seismic Cry. This is a war cry that knocks back nearby enemies and heavy stuns enemies that are primed for stun. It deals a little bit of physical damage, but basically we use it for the knockback with Empire's Grasp gloves to sort of draw enemies in. We use Corrupting Cry 2. Corrupted Blood deals 25% of your strength as physical damage per second, which is applied every time you war cry. Now this is useful in that every time you apply a stack of Corrupted Blood, all stacks of Corrupted Blood are refreshed duration-wise. So that means that the corrupted blood from Bloodbarrier will always apply, because all ailments, all damage over time, will only apply the strongest version of its effect. So even if you have 10 stacks of Corrupt and Cry from this, which are significantly weaker, anytime you apply a stack from Bloodbarrier, it'll overwrite the weakest stack that's available, and then you can just keep Warcrying to refresh the duration, which is handy for, say for example, you get a good amount of stacks on a boss, and then they do like a big dick move that stops them from attacking you while they charge it up. This just stops your stacks from falling off, basically. And also for enemies that don't hit, this is going to be your main damage against them. Even though it's weaker, it still works. It just takes a little bit longer to kill them. For that, we use Brutality for 30% more physical damage, we use Swift Affliction for 30% more non-ailment damage over time, and then the main tech we're using here is Second Wind 3. This makes it so that your skills have longer cooldowns, but you restore 2% of maximum life on use per 1 second cooldown of supported skills. Now, Seismic Cry by default has an 8-second cooldown. I think this only counts 8 seconds because it's not quite 9 seconds with this setup. But this means that every time you Warcry, you restore 16% of your maximum life every time. And you can Warcry 4 to 5 times per second. So you can restore a huge amount of your life, and this is flat recovery. It's instant. It's not like over time. It's just every time you use it, you will just straight up get 16% of your max life back. And the reason that this works is because Warcaller's Bellowline ignore Warcry cooldowns, doesn't remove the cooldown, it just makes it so that you don't proc it, basically. So that means that with Second Wind 3, you can get that, it counts the full cooldown of the skill, basically. And then in maps that have less cooldown recovery rate, you'll actually get more recovery from this as well. Now, I will say, this I think is an oversight. This might get changed. I hope it doesn't, but it is a massive amount of recovery for a minuscule amount of investment. So it's worth keeping in mind, this may at some point get nerfed, whether it's some point later in this league or some point next league or something like that. So that's the main thing you're going to be using. The next one is Iron Ward, was added this league. Basically, it's a persistent buff that stores a percentage of the physical damage that you mitigate through armor or other sources of damage reduction, and then you can use the skill again to release it as an AoE. Now, at this level, it stores 140% of physical damage and up to a ridiculously high base amount of 18,000 at level 19. It has more stun build up and then more AoE depending on how much. You'll see a number on the buff that goes from 0% up to 100%. 100% is where the cap is of 18,213. And basically I use this to armor break with armor break. Break armor equal to 20% of physical damage dealt by support skill. Armor Demolisher for more armor break. Brutality for more physical damage. Physical Mastery to pump up the skill levels, because skill levels will give you more, you'll give a higher percentage of stored mitigated physical damage and a higher maximum of stored mitigated physical damage. So basically just more good. So we want to armor break for Scavenge Plating. Scavenge Plating is another buff that gives 4% more armor per Scavenge Plating up to a maximum of 10, so 40% more armor at max stacks. This doesn't matter what level you have it at, you can just keep it at the lowest level possible if you really wanted to, because the only thing that does scale is the Thorns damage. The quality on this is duration, so it's pretty handy to get, because each stack of Scavenge Plating has an individual duration, so getting a new stack of this won't refresh old stacks, so it's important to sort of get as much duration as you can. So for that we use Prolonged Duration for more duration, we use Warm Blooded for 50% less freeze duration on us, and Strong Hearted for 50% less shock duration on us. Next up is Magma Barrier. Again, nothing on this scales with levels, so you can keep this as low as you want. This, we use this for the line grants 25% increased block chance, and then you get an extra 5% block chance from quality. Now this is increased block chance, same with anything on the tree, it just makes it easier to get your block capped. On this we're using Cannibalism 2 for 3% life recovery on kill, Vitality 2 for 2% life regen. The next one we're using is Time of Need. This is a buff that every 10 seconds at level 18, you'll recover 500 life and remove curses and elemental ailments. This duration can be reduced by less skill duration, or reduced skill duration. So with that, we use compressed duration to reduce the amount of time between procs. Use Vitality 1 for more life regen, because you can use Vitality 1, Vitality 2, Cannibalism 1, Cannibalism 2, so long as they're on different skills. And then the last one is Bloodhound's Mark, which is a mark skill that makes enemies suffer heavy stun build-up from blood loss. Blood loss is basically any physical damage over time. So that means that corrupted blood from your Warcry, from Bloodbarrier, will build up stun. And then we have Mark for Death, which is enemies marked by support skills have armor broken equal to 10% of physical damage taken. Now this is specifically physical damage from hits. I had hoped that this would work with corrupted blood, but it's specifically physical damage from hits. So this basically just stacks with Iron Ward. You don't deal a lot of damage with Seismic Cry itself. So yeah, there's that. And that's the skills. Again, it's just 10 red support gems is the only thing you really need, or is the most important thing here. That's kind of why I'm using like Vitality 1 and 2 and all these kind of ones here. Quick point on some things you might consider. Bakute's Pact is dog shit. Do not waste your time with it. It is no stronger than normal Corrupting Cry, and it will kill you. Basically, it inflicts 5 stacks of corrupted blood, but you lose 2% of your maximum life per stack. So, per use of your Warcry, you will lose 10% of your max life per enemy hit. So, if you hit a full pack, you will just straight up die. It's ass. So, don't waste your fucking time with this, it's dog shit. And you can only use it at level 65, so you can't even use it to level with. So, yeah, ignore this pile of shit. And then the last one is Astral Projection. In this patch, they added the Nova tag to Warcries, which makes it so that you can use Astral Projection. Astral Projection makes it so that Nova skills are cast at the targeted location instead of in a circle around you. Now, I had originally hoped that Empire's Grasp would mean that you could basically group up in a circle away from you and then pop them all at once, but it doesn't work like that. Instead, it just pulls them towards you from the circle. So it's a little bit shit in that respect, but if you did go for 5 sockets here, it's an option for the funnies. But that will basically be the gist of the build. That's kind of everything. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you have any questions, just throw them down in the comments and I'll answer literally anything about the game. It doesn't even have to be about this build specifically. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I shall hopefully see you again soon.